6. Dr. T. Mitchell Pruden visits Alamo Ranch. With Bert Cowing and editor Muldoon Kelly, the doctor joins Richard and Clayton Wetherill for a pack trip to Hopi country. Snake Dance at Walpi. Old Oriabi. The return journey by way of Keams Canyon. George Washington, a young Navajo, becomes their guide. They find shelter in a hogan of George's parents. Muldoon Kelly eats watermelons. Benjamin Wetherill, 63 years old, ailing but unwilling to admit it, heard stories coming from the San Juan and succumbed to gold fever. In January 1895, he left the Alamo Ranch for Bluff City, once more hoping to make his fortune. Richard had disappeared somewhere in the Marsh Pass region along with Al and Charlie Mason, and so was of no help to him. Wynne was at school in Denver. Old Benjamin was joined in the newest adventure by John and Clayton. Together they worked their claim during the rest of the winter, but with little success. For each time they managed to take out an ounce or so of gold a day, but stormy weather and floods on the San Juan constantly interrupted their work. Nevertheless, they stuck it out until approaching spring weather drove them back to the ranch. Muldoon Kelly observed in his paper on May 3rd, B.K. Wetherill is home from San Juan placer fields after an absence of some months. He did not bring a wagon load of gold. Spring planting was well into the ground when Richard and his companions rode in mancos, ragged and weary. Their shaggy hair and beards, and the condition of their clothes, told eloquently of the many weeks they'd been gone and the hardships they had endured. Nephi and the 4 or 5 other mules that had become gaunt under travel rations and heavy loads of pottery brought back from the Chaco Canyon were turned out to fatten and rollick in a clover patch. Richard and Al shaved off their beards. Their mother mended rents in their clothing. The collection of relics, remarkably unharmed, was stored in a little museum. Richard again turned his hand to ranch duties and to guiding the increasing number of tourists to the ruins of Mesa Verde. Among the scores of visitors this season were Miss Alice Eastwood of San Francisco and Dr. T. Mitchell Pruden of New York. Both came in July, drawn to Mancos for quite different reasons, and each found a warm welcome at the Wetherill home. Miss Eastwood then was 37 and already started on a career that made her internationally known as a botanist. She had joined the staff of the California Academy of Sciences in 1892. Her work took her all over the world, collecting thousands of plant specimens for her herbarium, and she came to Mancos with this purpose in mind. Richard, however, took her up on the Mesa to see Cliff Palace before she left, a week afterward, on the 10 days trip with Al Wetherill to collect desert plants in southeastern Utah. It was the first of several visits Miss Eastwood made to the Alamo Ranch. Each time she was most particularly welcomed by Al, who shared a sincere interest in her work. Dr. Pruden was on one of the first of his summer trips to the Southwest, seeking relief on the wind-swept sunny plateaus from his regular duties in the laboratory and lecture rooms at Columbia University. His arrival was the beginning of a long, close friendship between the scholarly pathologist and the Wetherill brothers. During these years, usually with Clayton as his guide, Dr. Pruden explored nearly every corner of the 120,000 square miles of Indian country and came to know it as intimately as he knew Manhattan Island or his native New Haven. A tall, lean, sad-faced man with long, thin beard and prominent nose above a drooping mustache, he had about him an air that almost at once commanded the confidence of frontiersmen in this region, as well as of the Navajos, who usually were slow in showing approval of any white man. A bachelor, he was a man with a quiet voice and gentle manner. As his knowledge of the region increased, his interest in modern Indians and their ancient forebears deepened proportionately. Of formal training in ethology or archaeology he had none, but his grasp of these sciences was remarkable for a man so dedicated to an unrelated science, medicine. His enormous vitality found an outlet first in solving some of the mysteries of the Anasazi, and then writing about his trips and discoveries. From his pen, and he wrote with a pen, came a number of semi-technical articles, notably Prehistoric Ruins of San Juan Watershed, which was published in American Anthropologist in 1903 and belongs with the Hayden surveys as one of the first reports of this kind in print. In a lighter vein for laymen, he wrote other articles and one book of lasting popular interest. For Harper's Monthly, he wrote A Summer Among the Cliff Dwellings, Under the Spell of the Grand Canyon, and An Elder Brother to the Cliff Dwellers. His book, On the Great American Plateau, which appeared in 1904, synthesizes everything he knew and felt about the Southwest. Dr. Pruden attained all available maps of this wild, largely unknown region, and when he found that each was inaccurate or lacking in the detail he wanted, he made a map of his own. Published with his report on the San Juan ruins, this map shows the course of the rivers and their tributaries, mountain ranges, and the more important trading posts and towns of the Four Corners region, as well as the approximate location of most of the ancient ruins throughout the area. Despite certain inaccuracies, it was the best archaeological map of the country up to that time. After his first visit to the Alamo Ranch, Dr. Pruden arranged in advance for Clayton or one of the other brothers to meet him at Albuquerque, Gallup, or Durango, depending on the plan of exploration for that season. The brother who met him, and usually was Clayton, always had fully outfitted pack train waiting so no time would be lost in getting started. Aside from his contribution to the public's knowledge of the region, Dr. Pruden's most important achievement in this field was his special research into the little-known, small unit-type Pueblo, which flourished throughout the San Juan Basin about 1,000 years ago. In simplest terms, the unit-type Pueblo, which he named, was a communal dwelling, consisting usually of one story and from 1 to 4 rooms to 15 or slightly more. In the smallest of these dwellings, the rooms were laid out in a single straight row. As it became larger, wings were added at both ends to form an open rectangle. In each case, the Pueblo was almost invariably facing south, overlooking one or more detached kivas, and generally further to the south, the communal refuse mound. Dr. Pruden largely confined his research to surface exploration until 1913, when he partially excavated 4 unit-type structures in and near Montezuma Valley. 2 years later, before illness forced him to remain in the east, he excavated at 3 more sites in the same general vicinity. Although his digging uncovered not more than 25 rooms and 4 kivas, his work is significant because it was the first to focus attention upon the small, transitional period of Pueblo life and architecture, rather than on more spectacular dwellings of the so-called classic period. On his first visit to the Alamo Ranch, Pruden was a guest of the Wetherills for most of July 1895. In August, it was proposed that a party be made to go up to the snake dance being given that year at Walpi. The group included Richard and Clayton, Dr. Pruden, young Bert Cowing, who was spending his last summer at the ranch, and Muldoon Kelly. Bert Cowing kept a journal of the party's experiences, lively and observant account written for the benefit of his family. Muldoon Kelly, presumably the one qualified writer of the expedition, glumly remained silent and did not send his paper 1 line. Richard thought it advisable, time being short, to take a guide who would know where they could find water and good grass. A Navajo of his acquaintance named Jim Joe, or Teha'ane, who lived near Bluff City, seemed to meet his requirements and was engaged. Following a branch of the Shinle, which Bert Cowan understood Richard to pronounce as Chilla-Lee, they spent their fourth night in the vicinity of Marsh Pass. Then, favored with good hot weather and none of August cloudbursts, they descended through Cletha Valley to the sandy plateau overlooking Moenkopi Wash. From there, Jim Joe took them eastward across a high open desert, broken here and there by wide, deep canyons, where the only trees were patches of cedar dotting the highest mesas. They crossed Dinebita Wash, dry as a whitened bone, and after some 200 miles and 6 days on horseback, came to the wide valley below Walpi. Here they parted company with their guide.
And I feel like New York City. Get me to the farm.